Hey guys, welcome back to Bobby Says Reviews, where I review movies. And today we're talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with spoilers. So if you don't want to get spoiled, watch the movie, come on back, and we'll discuss. I'm going to go over the things that I didn't like and then get into what I liked. At the end, I will give you a rating, and that's how we'll do this. Very short, simple, quick, but effective. Things I didn't like. I didn't like the way they brought them together, meaning the Spider-Men. The way the reason why all the Spider-Men are together, Kingpin. In a flashback piece, you see the Kingpin with Spider-Man pinned up against the wall, Peter Parker Spider-Man, Peter Parker from Miles' Earth Spider-Man, and Kingpin is just beating Peter up bad. His wife Vanessa and son, they walk in on this, they see this, they are terrified, mortified, and they run out of the house. She takes them, they jump into a car, and they speed off away from the house. They get T-boned at an intersection, and they both die. So then, with the help of scientists, the Kingpin is going to open and breach different alternate realities to get his family back, thus causing the other dimensions that he's breaching to come together. And that's how we get all the Spider-Man in one place. Now, personally, this is a negative because it's a weak plot. It's not strong enough to make a whole movie around. They could tweak it and make it, I wouldn't say better, but just a more smarter, reasonable, more logical plot. So what they could have done, right, is the same setup. Kingpin's beating up Spider-Man, wife and son see it, they leave the house, speeding in a car, and get T-boned, and they both get killed. Now, instead of the Kingpin using the Hydrogen Collider to get his family back, he says, because he's going to blame Spider-Man, because that's just typical comic book villain stuff, he says, I'm going to make sure there is no Spider-Man in existence. I'm going to wipe out every Spider-Man on every alternate reality there ever was. And then he breaches them all to one location, so it's easier for him and the other villains to try to kill them. To me, that would make it more logical, reasonable to understand, because then it's a race for the other Spider-Man to get home, and then, before dying, basically. Because in the movie, the other Spider-Men that are from the other realities, they have this. It looks like a glitch, like Wreck-It Ralph when she's like glitching. That's what it looks like, and it's the way it's explained in the movie is because their atoms aren't from this reality, this dimension, so they're becoming unstable. The longer they stay here, the more unstable they will become, and they will die. So there's stakes there. There's levity there. You go, oh my god, like they got to get back home before this happens. So if you twist it like I just proposed, where Kingpin wants to kill all the Spider-Men because of what happened to his family, and they have to race against the clock before their atoms explode or whatever will happen, that's where you have this big, and to me, better plot and storytelling device to carry a movie. But it's already out there. It's already in the movie. You can't change it now. I just think it's just weak. The plot is weak. I didn't like. Okay, this is a weird, like on the fence one for me. I didn't like, but I liked how badass and Alfred-like Aunt May was. So in the movie, on Miles' Earth, Peter Parker dies. Miles is there. Miles was already bitten by the spider. He's there watching Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin. Before Peter Parker dies, he hands Miles the USB drive because earlier in that sequence, Miles got in the way of the fight. Spider-Man had to swing in and save him. So here he knows he's there, and then the Spider Sense goes off, and he knows that they're alike. So he gives him the USB drive. The USB drive is like a virus code. You plug it into the Hydrogen Collider, and it kills the machine. It breaks in him trying to get away. They go to Aunt May's house. And Aunt May, like I said, it's like Alfred, where Myles says to Aunt May, hey, I was there when Peter died. I'm sorry. He gave me this before he died. Does he have an area where we can go to make a new one? And she just says, follow me. And they go out back to the shed. The other Peter Parker from the other reality was like, oh, I got this. In my reality, it's just a shed. I have a couple gizmos in there. Nah, bruh, not like this. She puts the key in, turns the key. The door lights up, all red, spider symbol. Doors open, they step in, doors close. It's an elevator, goes down several stories into the ground, where you get to the spider cave. That's basically what it is. He has his vehicles, the buggy, the motorcycle. He has all the suits and glass cases, computers and screens. It's basically the spider cave for Spider-Man. And at this moment, we get introduced to Penny Parker, Peter Porker, and Spider-Man Noir. Later in the film, when Myles finally gets it all together in his head and he's ready to be Spider-Man, because throughout the whole movie, the one constant thing is everyone tells him, no, you're not ready, you're too young, you're inexperienced, you're going to get you or us killed in a fight. And he keeps saying, I'm ready, I can do this. They say, no, no, no. He says, yes, yes, yes. He finally gets his act together, goes to Aunt May's house. She's sitting in a chair, basically, like, sipping tea or coffee, and says, took you long enough. And then she helps him get his suit, his web slingers, everything like that. Like I said, basically, Alfred / that woman from The Incredibles, I forget her name now, who makes the suits. It's like those two characters combined. So it's like on the fence, because it's like, she's badass, but it's also like, really? That's how you're going to... Okay. Whatever. It's in the, like I said, it's already in the movie. Nothing I can do about it now. But when it comes to negatives, besides the plot, the whole plot device to bring them together, the reasoning behind it, the Aunt May thing, that's all I got for negatives. Everything else is a plus. The animation, gorgeous, amazing. The way it looks. It's literally a comic book come to life. Now, you can nitpick it and say, at times it's blurry, because it is. The animation, it's just, you can't help it. That's just a byproduct of the animation. It's just every now and again, it looks a little out of focus, looks a little blurry. But it's not bad enough to where it's going to take you out of the film. And you're like, oh, that looks, or this looks. It's just something you notice real quick, and then, boom, it's gone. Soundtrack and score to this movie, incredible. You have moments where you don't even need characters to say anything. You can put one of these songs on top of the scene and you feel the levity, you feel the emotion it's trying to convey. You got Post Malone's on the soundtrack, Vince Staples. Vince Staples' song is actually the main song you hear on all the trailers. And the songs work in this whole movie. It's not like it's force-fed in there, where it's like they're trying to be hip and trendy. It fits the tone of the movie. It fits the scenes of the movie. And if they would have chose anything else, honestly, it wouldn't have worked. Every song they picked and every moment they put those songs in worked to the fullest. Amazing job on that. When it comes to the Spider-Men, I pretty much liked them all. Penny Parker was kind of like, okay, like, you didn't really need Penny Parker there, but okay, cool. Miles Morales in this movie is way different than his comic book self. In the comic book, he's a nerd, like a nerd. He is socially awkward and doesn't want the burden of being Spider-Man. Miles' best friend in the comics is more excited about Miles having powers than Miles is about having powers. His best friend in the comics basically has to thrust Miles into being what he becomes. In this movie, Miles wants desperately to be Spider-Man. He's a fan of Spider-Man. In the movie, when Spider-Man dies, Peter Parker, Miles is Peter Parker, when he dies, he goes into basically like a party city and buys a cheap Spider-Man costume, and I'm talking like the back's not zipped up, the tag's still on it, the mask has holes in it for your eyes, like a cheap $5 costume, and that's pretty much what he uses up until he goes to that Aunt May part I just talked about, where he gets a suit. He is a fanboy of Spider-Man. He wants to be Spider-Man, and the whole entire time, like I told you, I already said, they're telling him no, and he's saying yes. When it comes to the other Peter Parker from the other reality, he's the complete opposite of the Peter Parker from Miles' Earth. He's out of shape, a little older, battle tested. He's divorced from MJ. He's going through it. He's having a rough go. And then he slowly almost has to like rediscover himself of who he is and why he is Spider-Man, which is cool to see. Because at first he's kind of like, Miles, whatever you got to destroy this thing, give me it. I'm getting out of here. I don't need you, to becoming a mentor by the end. In this movie and in the comics, Miles' uncle Aaron is the Prowler. That doesn't change. Miles' origin does change. In the comics, the Prowler he robs a Oscorp abandoned factory, whatever's left. A spider crawls into his bag. He brings the bag home. Miles comes over, gets bit. Spider-Man. In this movie, Miles goes to a boarding school where he goes from Monday through Friday and comes home on the weekend type of deal. He needs to escape from that life. He doesn't really like it. So he sneaks out of school one night, goes to his uncle's house, and he's just kicking it back. He's just chilling. They're talking about a girl he likes, which ends up being Gwen Stacy, but Gwen Stacy doesn't really want friends or need friends, and I'll explain why. So she says her name is Gwenda, because she kind of catches herself at saying Gwen Stacy. She goes, "I'm Gwenda," and he's like, "Gwenda," and it's a little funny spot. So when they're talking about this girl, he's in his uncle's notebook, and he's tagging the notebook up, and it says expectations. Now, that theme and the tag itself you see multiple times in the film. Okay, it's prevalent in the film. So his uncle sees it, thinks it's good, takes him to the subway. They sneak onto the tracks into this little gated off area where everyone comes to tag. Boombox going, Miles doing his thing. A robotic spider comes down from the ceiling, crawls around a little bit, gets into a bag here, a sleeve here, a hoodie there, and finally Miles, when he's leaving, takes a picture of his tag. Spider bites him on the hand. Now, that doesn't really matter as much, the change there, because either way, he gets bit because of his uncle. But I like the comic version better, because it has more levity to it, to me, I think, because of what happens in the future with Spider-Man and the Prowler. In this movie, he's still the Prowler. Miles doesn't know he's the Prowler until he goes to his uncle's house again to leave him a note. Basically, the note says something like, "I need to talk to you," whatever, something like in that regard. He sees the Prowler come up to the window. He gets scared. Now, Miles has 2 additional powers, and they're both a flight or fight reaction. So when he's scared, he turns invisible. So he got scared because the Prowler chased him after Peter Parker gave him the USB drive. He turns invisible. The Prowler comes in. He can kind of sense someone's there. Miles kind of sneaks out the back way. Prowler catches him, and then a chase ensues that way. A little later in the film, they're all at Aunt May's house. Doc Ock shows up. Doc Ock is actually a scientist working with Kingpin on the Hydrogen Collider. And yes, it is a woman, so brace yourself. Not that it matters. Just some people will be like, "Oh, it's a woman." Whatever, it's Doc Ock. It ain't Doc Man. It's Doc Ock. She shows up. Scorpion's there. He kind of just shows up. He's not really in the movie until that point. You see his tail first, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I guess he's here. Awesome." And a fight ensues. The Prowler's there. A fight ensues in the home and then outside the home as well. The Prowler catches Miles and says, any last words? Miles takes off his cheap Party City Spider-Man costume, and then he realizes at that moment, oh my god, this is my nephew. The Kingpin is watching the Prowler and Spider-Man, and the Kingpin says, what are you waiting for, Prowler? Kill him. The Prowler puts his helmet back on, puts his Spider-Man's mask back down, and lets him go. At that moment, you hear a gunshot, and the Prowler's dead. Well, dying. He got shot by Kingpin. Kingpin tries to shoot Myles. He dodges it, scoops up his uncle, swings away. He then has his Uncle Ben moment, where his uncle is basically saying, I failed you, I'm sorry, be better than me. Miles' dad, who is a cop in this movie, drives up on them in the alleyway. Dad says, Spider-Man, hands up. He gets scared, turns invisible, he's gone. His dad finds his brother laying dead. So at that point in the movie, because they're still telling Miles, no, you're not ready, you're inexperienced, you think, okay, this is his Uncle Ben, this is where he comes to Jesus in a sense. Not yet. You still got a little bit. So they had the USB. They made a new USB with that code on it to kill the Hadron Collider. They're getting ready to go to the Hadron Collider because they're going to have all the Spider-Man go back to the realities. And Peter Parker from the other reality is going to stay behind and die, sacrifice himself to destroy the Hadron Collider because they can't count on Miles to be the one who destroys it. They also have to leave. Miles says, I can do it. Peter, sweeps his leg, grabs him and says, if you can do this, then turn invisible, shock me, do something. And you see Miles, he's struggling and he can't do it on command. So he webs him to a chair, webs his mouth and says, I'm sorry, but you're not ready, and leaves. Miles' dad comes to his dorm room, knocks on the door, doesn't walk in because the door is locked, and he respects his son's privacy, and basically talks to him through the door, saying, I love you. You don't have to do the school thing if you don't want to. There's a spark in you. You're amazing. You heard that voiceover in the trailer a lot. And basically, whatever you're going to do with your life, I 1,000% back you because you're my son and I love you, and you're going to be amazing whatever you do. This is the moment after his uncle's already dead and his dad now fully accepts him because he doesn't want to do the school thing. He fully accepts him for wherever he wants to be, no matter what he does. His dad will be behind him. He then breaks out of the web using his electrical ability, then goes to Ant-Man to get the suit, and then meets up with the rest of the guys at the Kingpin's, hotel penthouse. A battle ensues. Miles is a big key part. He plugs the USB drive in. The portal opens. One by one, all the Spider-Men go back. Kingpin intervenes before Peter Parker can go back. And Peter Parker's still willing to die at this part. He's like, I'm not. I'm staying. You destroy the Hadron Collider. I'll take care of Kingpin. Miles is like, are you crazy? You're going back home. And Peter says, I can't let Spider-Man die. And Miles says, either can I. Because remember, earlier in the film, Miles watched the other Peter Parker die. And he didn't do nothing about it. Or couldn't do nothing about it at that point. So he's basically telling this Peter, I'm not going to watch you die again and have me staying here and do nothing. Like, I'm going to do something this time. You're going home. I just mentioned, before they left to the Hadron Collider, Peter Parker swept Miles' leg and grabbed him by the shirt and said, then do something. Go invisible, whatever. In this moment, the portal's right below them. Miles sweeps Peter's leg and grabs him. And he basically tells him, you're going home. And then Peter says, it's just a leap of faith. Because before they left to go to the Hadron Collider, Miles asked Peter, when will I know I'm ready to be Spider-Man? And Peter says, you don't. It's just a leap of faith. So in this moment where Miles sweeps his leg and grabs him by the shirt and says, you're going home, and there's more to it, but that's basically what it is. And he says, it's just a leap of faith. And then he lets go and he falls back into the portal. Miles then has to fight off Kingpin and all this stuff, and for a moment he's getting whipped. He's getting his ass whipped pretty good. And here's another little negative I have about the movie coming up right here, is where he's getting his ass whipped and he needs motivation to pull him up. And he looks over to the observation deck where Kingpin was originally standing to turn on the Hadron Collider. And who's standing there? Myles' dad. Myles' dad is just there at the right time to say, "Get up, Spider-Man." It's kind of cheesy. It's kind of weak. But it's also an animated movie geared more towards a younger audience. So it's whatever. It's a negative, but it's a nitpick at best. He then turns the tables on Kingpin. There's a green button he has to hit to shut it all down. He basically uses Kingpin, like kicks him up and then shoots him with a web straight back, and then hits the button, destroying the Hadron Collider. This movie does an amazing job at capturing what it is to be Spider-Man. The feeling I got when I was a kid reading Spider-Man, watching the animated Spider-Man series, the feeling I got watching that and reading that is the same feeling I would guess I would feel if I was Spider-Man, and this movie captures it. This movie makes you feel like you're Miles Morales. You're just some kid from a town who happened to get bit, and you have no idea what to do. Basically what I would do, like I'd be like, what do I do now? Type of deal. This movie is a step forward in animation, in storytelling through animation, and I can't wait to see where this animation and this type of storytelling goes in the future. As a grade, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, for me, gets an 8 out of 10. I was going back and forth with it a lot. I said a lot of numbers leading up to this. But when I look at my overall negatives to the positives, I can't give any lower than an 8. It did an amazing job to capture your imagination and make you feel like you could be Spider-Man, and anybody could be a Spider-Man. That's what I love about Spider-Man in general, because he wears a full bodysuit. So you don't see his face. You don't know, so when you see Spider-Man in the costume, anybody, it could be a man, woman, white, black, whatever. It doesn't matter. Anyone can wear the mask, and that's another theme in this movie, that you don't have to just be a certain person or certain, race, color, creed, whatever. You can be anybody and be Spider-Man as long as you possess the right heart, the right morals, and you live by the code. You can be Spider-Man. It's amazing. I would say go see it as soon as possible. I'm about to go see it again with my son. Again, that's an 8 out of 10. A must see.